Hey guys, welcome to the series that I'm going to do on Evennia. Evennia is a uh, mud, mux, mush, whatever, moo development framework. So it gives you a code base to build any of those technologies off of, and it just basically defines for you some very simple building blocks that will go out to build whatever you would like. It's fairly unopinionated in its functionality and provides you with a lot of very, very helpful methods um, that if you were to write them in other code bases would take you a long while to reach what Evennia gives you out of the box. And by what it gives you out of the box, I don't mean like, oh, it has guns or oh, it has, wizards or whatever. No, just actual library level functionality out of the box that a lot of stuff does not give you. I do have a cold, so if I sound funny, I apologize. I will try to jump right into things. So let's go. This is the Evennia homepage. If you click Getting Started, you will see, hey, this is how you get started. You do not have to expose your game to the internet to get going, which is good. You'll see this quick start section, which is, yeah, this is what I've always used. There's more information, like if you're running Windows, or what have you, or you just want a little bit of extra information, or maybe you want to run on PyPy instead of Python. If you don't know what either of those things are, then don't worry about it. Just install Evennia. So let's go back up to the quick start because I'm going to take you through that. If you already have Evennia installed, you may want to go ahead and skip this video. There might be value in a bit of the explanation. If you're really not sure what some of the things that you did were, this video will explain them. If you feel completely confident, then just go on ahead and skip this video. So, download and install Python and Git. Start a console or terminal. Well, I'm going to do instructions out of order and start a terminal first because I cannot do this previous instruction without it. Now, I'm using Linux, so if you are on Windows, there are instructions for Windows. If you really want to use Windows, go right ahead. I find Linux a more efficient development environment. If you want to experiment with Linux, you can pretty easily set up a virtual machine. If you have never done that before, Google something like VirtualBox, and it is pretty easy to get a virtual machine going, and you will have learned something new and have a sense of accomplishment by the end. The only part that could be a little bit tricky is the networking. Virtual machines have bridge NAT or host networking, and all of those will work, but they'll all behave a little differently. So if you're having trouble getting connected to your MUD, then uh, read some documentation, RTFM. Now, so let's get started. Uh, Download and install Python and Git. Okay. You actually need a little bit more than Python and Git. There's some dependencies, you would say, on Ubuntu Linux or any Linux, as a matter of fact. You will want to have the libraries that are needed to compile the things that make Python work. So Build Essential is a lot of the development libraries and programs that you will need to build C applications and a lot of the things that are underlying to the Python framework. Check install. I do not even remember what that is. libc6 dev, C development headers. Python dev, Python development headers. Bison is a builder thing. Python pip. This one's important. Pip is the package manager for Python. So sort of like Ubuntu has apt-get, a Mac has Homebrew, or maybe you are familiar with JavaScript and have used npm or Composer from PHP. It's all the same idea, except Composer sucks, and npm and pip do not. Uh, Pip is just the tool that you're going to use to pull down any Python library that you would like for your code. It's a big centralized repository of community committed libraries. And then Git, which is also very important. This is the program that interfaces with any Git repository out there on the web. So it'll work for Bitbucket, GitHub, or any of those that you want to use that are Git compatible. So I would suggest running this command actually first, just to make sure you have the framework that you, I keep saying framework, just to make sure that you have the foundation of packages that you need. I already have them installed, so it's not going to do anything for me, but it will for you. So then we can go back to the quick start, pip install virtual environment. So what this is going to do, pip, so virtual environment is just a Python package. What it does, it's a lot like a virtual machine, except it's not as robust as an actual virtual machine. It's just a little isolated environment on your machine. And what it does is, let's say you have virtual environment, 1, 2, 3, 3 different ones. And in each of them, you do like a pip install Gandalf, a pip install Frodo, and a pip install Samwise Gamgee. What's going to happen is Gandalf, Frodo, and Samwise are all going to be in isolated environments. They cannot speak to each other, see each other. They are not aware of each other's existence. And so this is beneficial for development projects because sometimes you need different packages or different versions of the same package. You can run into some headaches. So it's just a really good practice to have a virtual environment that you're developing in. So pip install virtual env. I already have it, so it's not going to do anything. You may want to put a sudo in front of it if you are on an Ubuntu machine, and that will give it administrator privileges to create the files that it needs to create. It has to write into user local, which I do not think that you can do with regular user permissions. So let's see what's next. CD to some place to put your virtual environment. So yeah, a virtual environment actually has to exist somewhere. So I'm going to go to code Evennia. This is where I have all my Evennia code at. You see there's some of my other projects. So I'm going to make their screencast. Screeninnia. There it is. Screeninnia. And that's where we're going to go. So I'm going to create my virtual environment in here. The command to do that is, you'll notice you have a virtual env command now after the pip install. You can read all of that help if you would like, but its usage is pretty basic. Virtual env pyenv is what the instructions say over here on step 4. This pyenv can be whatever you would like. So I'm going to call this Screeninnia because that name just rolls off the tongue. So that is created now. We'll create a directory there. So I need to use source, the environment you just created, bin, activate. And this will actually switch me, it will run a script and switch me into kind of a modified shell environment that will be in that new environment. You notice that I now have Screeninnia over here. So now whatever I pip install is in here. When I install Evennia, it will only be in Screeninnia. So if I want to work on this game that I'm about to make, I will need to make sure that I'm in this virtual environment. Otherwise, I will not get very far. It's an easy thing to forget when you just get on your computer and want to do some work. You need to make sure that you run that source command. CD to someplace to put Evennia, step 6. Okay. I'm just going to put it right in here. So I'm going to do git clone, git at github.com, Evennia /evennia.git, and that will create an Evennia directory for me right here where I'm at. Cloning into Evennia, see? If you're not familiar with how to use Git, there are plenty of tutorials on the internet. Just type in how to use Git, or github.com has some really good tutorials and documentation on their website as well. So all I did was git clone. To do it like I did it, you will have to have SSH keys set up, but again, you can that process is documented for you on GitHub's website. So there's Evennia now. So let's see, what's next? CD Evennia. Okay. Pip install -e period. Period means here where I am. So pip install -e in here. There is it's going to install this stuff. The requirements.txt is what's telling pip what to install. So we're about to install Django, Twisted, Mock, Pillow, and Pits. So when I do pip install -e here, it's going to install everything in there. So let's do that. You see it installing those things. And we're done. Let's see, cd to someplace to put your game. I like to keep my game directory and my Evennia directory side by side. You don't have to do that, but it's probably the best way to do that actually. If you do it inside of Evennia, then that's going to mess up the Git repository. It's going to want you to push that stuff upstream. So I would recommend getting out of that directory and just having them side by side. So after we did that pip install in there, we now have an Evennia command. So you can just type Evennia, evennia.h. You see we have this full command here. This command does a lot of stuff that you don't need to know about right now, like the dummy runner is used for basically load testing. This is the command also that you will use to start and stop and reload your server. It will tell you what version of Evennia you have, and lots of other things like that. Right now we just want to get a game started, so we're going to use the initialization Evennia --init my game. Again, my game is just in this example. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name it Screeninia. What? Oh, it wants to create the directory, so, and that's what I named my virtual environment, so I can't do that. I'll call it Screenia world. So you get this. Welcome to Evennia. Created a new Evennia game directory, Screenia world. You can now optionally edit your new settings file, blah, blah, blah. You don't need me to read to you, hopefully. So now you can go into your game directory and run Evennia migrate. And what that will do is set up your database. By default, the database is SQLite 3, as opposed to, MySQL or Postgres or something like that. I'm not sure actually if Evennia has any support for a NoSQL implementation. I don't know. I've never tried to use it with that, but this is going to be relational data, so you shouldn't use a NoSQL for it anyhow, because they don't really do relational data as well as a relational database. So I'm going to go in there and wait, I went to the wrong place. CD Screenia world. This is my game directory. So I can just type Evennia migrate like it told me. This initializes the database. So you'll see this really fancy looking stuff go by. Don't worry about it. This is running migrations. In Evennia, it's a development framework, so it ships with a bunch of stuff. All of those migrations came with a bunch of stuff that you downloaded when you cloned it. So those migrations have all been put into a lethal database. I believe it's, yeah, there's the database, the evennia.db3 right here. That's our SQLite database. If you delete that, all of your data will go away and you will need to run Evennia migrate again. It's a good way to actually reset your game. Like if you've been playing with room creation, or you made a bunch of characters, whatever, and you want to just kind of wipe the slate and start over because you're just playing around with stuff, come in here, bomb that file, go back out, migrate again, and you'll have a fresh uh, install, quote unquote, of Evennia, and that is in the server directory. So we did that. Evennia migrate, Evennia start. Okay, so I'll show you guys this. So we say Evennia-i start, create a super user. This user is basically the all-powerful user on your MUD. Um, any sort of permissions just does not apply to them. They are almighty. So uh, I, be careful with this user. Some of your testing may not work as this user because they will bypass any sort of checks. Um, so you need to have a super user, but then also you may want to create for yourself a few other users. Maybe one that is an immortal, just not a super user, and maybe one that is just a regular mortal to do some playtesting on. But first we have to define our super user. So I'm going to say that mine is Super Screen Man, and my email address is going to be superscreenman at superscreenman.com. And my password is going to be SSM for Super Screen Man, SSM again for Super Screen Man. Now we see all this garbage. This is the server starting up. So copying. So what you see here, again, when you did your git clone, you got a lot of stuff that just comes with all that. It's your foundation. It's the framework. What this is doing is copying a bunch of stuff over. 73 static files copied. Okay, thanks. Now it's starting the server, starting Evennia portal in daemon mode. It's scary. So this is what we're actually going to connect to. AMP to server 5000, telnet 4000, woo. Web proxy is 8000, and we'll go to 5001. The 8001 is the WebSocket. So yeah, there's WebSockets built in. You can connect telnet or WebSocket, which makes some really cool opportunities for a web client. The web client still needs a little love, but the WebSocket functionality is there to create something. The website just hasn't gotten a lot of attention yet because the concentration has primarily been on core functionality. Running the add initial setup hooks. So this is all just, in Evennia's code somewhere where it's setting up player number 1 and limbo. So it creates for you a little room apparently. Server has started. Log opened. Twisted, which is the networking library in Python that we're using to handle all of the connections and to start this server up. Reactor is something that Twisted uses. Starting factory. Server shut down. Server restarting. So you did a restart because a bunch of stuff just got set up. Some things were changed. So we need to kind of cycle, reload. So here we are again, and we're started up now. So I'm going to open up another terminal. And I'm going to telnet localhost 4000. And here we are in Scrinia world. So I can connect Super Screen Man. Super Screen Man. Boom. Now we see this limbo room that was created. And here we are. So, look me. This is user number 1. So you start off as number 1, and you have this room here. This is all that exists so far. So from here on out, you would be creating things with the building blocks that the library gives you. So that is that. We're not going to create anything just yet. I will show you in just a couple minutes time here, how how Evennia is set up and where some of the important stuff is. Basically, all the stuff that just happened, kind of where some of it lives. So let's go down one. So we have Evennia and Skrinia. So I'm going to open up this directory. Now, Evennia, this is the lib. This is where you get cloned, and you just pulled all of this down. This is like the core, the library that sets everything up. This is where the Evennia command came from. Everything that is the core of the framework is in here. You should never change anything in here. Game template. You'll notice that these look very similar. Command server type classes web world. Command server type classes web world. So this is what it uses to set up when you do your initialization. You should never change anything in here. It gives all the default commands that you start out with in here. But if you want to change any of those, you can override them in your game. So eventually, as your development time goes on, a lot of things that are defined in here will transition to being defined in here. So this is where you want to live. You want to go to your game directory. Just ignore your Python environment. You want to go to your game directory, and this is where you're going to live. You have commands. So this is the command class here. You'll notice that you can, from Evennia, import. So you have a nice Evennia Python library that you can pull from. And you have these commands here. So from Evennia, import command as base command. Class command inherits base command. If you don't understand inheritance and importing, don't worry about it. I am going to cover that likely in the next episode. So here's just some classes for commands. Like I said, this will override the defaults, so never change anything in Evennia. Server, this stuff is stuff that you likely will not want to mess with from the start. Type classes, you could think of these as base classes. You have your character, exits, objects, what the player object is, the room object, and it's all just sitting here blank, ready for you to define it. Scripts is another one of the core building blocks. Don't let type classes confuse you. You could just think of those as your building blocks. You will eventually write some more of those because you will need more building blocks to do everything you want to do. Web, this is everything that goes into the web. You have some templates in here. You have your static resources, and you have your routing. This is all Django. So if you do not know Django, don't mess with the web portion yet. There are some tutorials on the Evennia website in the documentation section for how to do some stuff with the web portion. World. This is where most of your content will go. This directory can be organized however you would like for it to be. And so, all of your mobs, your weapons, your whatever you want to create and put in your world will go in here. All these other directories you will occasionally use. Type classes will probably be a close second to world. But world inside your game directory is pretty much where you'll live at until you start doing some more advanced things. So hopefully that got you to Evennia is installed. I can connect. I sort of know what these directories are and what's in them, and gets you ready to actually start doing some development. So next time you're hearing from me, we will be creating something. Thanks, and